Jennifer Kesse disappeared without a trace, then police found her car the morning she vanished. Imagine waking up on an ordinary Tuesday morning, taking a shower, getting dressed for work, and walking out of your home. Nothing seems unusual. You have plans for the day, you have a job to get to, you have family and friends expecting to hear from you, and then, somehow, you disappear. That is what happened to 24-year-old Jennifer Joyce Kesse. On January 24, 2006, Jennifer was supposed to go to work in Orlando, Florida. She never arrived. Her family quickly realized something was seriously wrong, because Jennifer was extremely reliable. When her employer contacted her parents to tell them she had not shown up for work, they immediately began trying to reach her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her parents drove toward Orlando, and when they eventually entered Jennifer's condominium, they found something deeply unsettling. The home looked almost completely normal. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no broken door, no overturned furniture, no dramatic scene suggesting that something terrible had happened. Instead, there were small details suggesting Jennifer had gotten ready for work that morning. A wet towel, clothes that appeared to have been selected for the day, her makeup. Everything seemed to indicate that Jennifer had begun her normal morning routine. But Jennifer was gone, and her car was gone too. What happened next would become one of the most mysterious missing person cases in America, because 2 days later, Jennifer's car was discovered abandoned about a mile from her condominium, and surveillance cameras captured the person who appeared to have parked it. There was just one problem. The person's face was hidden. For nearly 2 decades, that grainy piece of surveillance footage has remained one of the most frustrating clues in the case. And as of 2026, Jennifer Kesse still has not been found. Who was Jennifer Kesse? Before looking at the mystery, it is important to remember that Jennifer was much more than a missing person photograph. She was 24 years old. She had graduated from the University of Central Florida and had built a promising life for herself in Orlando. She worked for Westgate Resorts and had recently been promoted. She had also purchased a condominium of her own. To the people who knew her, Jennifer was responsible, organized, ambitious, and close to her family. She was also in a relationship with Rob Allen, who lived in Fort Lauderdale. The two had been dating long distance and regularly communicated by phone. In January 2006, Jennifer and Rob had taken a trip to St. Croix. Jennifer returned to Florida shortly before she disappeared, and according to accounts from her family, she seemed happy. That makes what happened next even more difficult to understand. There was no known plan for Jennifer to disappear. There was no confirmed message indicating that she intended to leave, and there was no confirmed explanation for why she would simply abandon her life. The FBI continues to list Jennifer as missing and says her disappearance is considered suspicious. The last night, Jennifer returned from her trip and went back to her normal routine. On Monday, January 23, 2006, she went to work. Later that day, she spoke with members of her family. That evening, she spoke with Rob. Their final conversation has received a great deal of attention because it was the last confirmed communication between Jennifer and someone close to her. The conversation reportedly included a disagreement about their relationship, but there is no evidence that the disagreement explains Jennifer's disappearance. That distinction is important. True crime stories often turn a final argument into a convenient explanation, but an argument is not proof of a crime. And there is no public evidence establishing that Rob was responsible for what happened to Jennifer. After their conversation, Jennifer went to bed. The next morning, she was expected to go to work. She never arrived. The morning of January 24th, one of them involved communicating with Rob in the morning, but on January 24th, that call never came. Rob attempted to contact her. His calls went to voicemail. At first, this could have been explained by something completely ordinary. Maybe Jennifer was running late. Maybe she was already in the shower. Maybe her phone battery had died. But then Jennifer failed to show up for work. That was when concern turned into alarm. Her employer contacted her parents. Drew and Joyce Kesse immediately began making their way to Orlando. When the family arrived at Jennifer's condominium, they noticed that her car was missing. But inside the home, there was no obvious indication of violence. Her belongings were still there. Her routine appeared to have been interrupted rather than deliberately abandoned. Several important personal items were missing, including her phones, keys, purse, and driver's license. The question became, did Jennifer leave voluntarily, or had someone taken her? The first major clue. Investigators began searching. Family members, friends, police officers, and volunteers joined the effort. But there was one major problem. There were very few confirmed sightings of Jennifer after she left home. Then, 2 days after she disappeared, investigators found her black 2004 Chevrolet Malibu. It was abandoned at the Huntington on the Green apartment complex, roughly a mile from Jennifer's condominium. And this discovery completely changed the investigation, because Jennifer's car had not simply been abandoned somewhere random. There was surveillance footage. A camera had captured a person driving Jennifer's car into the apartment complex. The person parked the vehicle, then they got out and walked away. According to the FBI, the surveillance image shows a person of interest walking away from Jennifer's Chevrolet Malibu after parking it at an apartment complex approximately 1 mile from her condominium. For Jennifer's family, this was potentially the breakthrough they had been waiting for. If investigators could identify that person, perhaps they could determine where Jennifer had gone. Perhaps they could finally learn who had taken her car. Perhaps they could find Jennifer. But then investigators noticed something incredibly frustrating. The person's face was blocked. The phantom figure. The surveillance system did not capture continuous video in the way modern security cameras often do. Instead, the system captured images at intervals. As the person walked through the area, their body repeatedly moved behind objects, and in the crucial frames, a fence post blocked the person's face. One frame, blocked. Another frame, blocked. Another, still blocked. It almost looked impossible. Investigators had footage of the person who appeared to have parked Jennifer's car, but they couldn't clearly see who the person was. The Kesse family later described this individual as one of the most important clues in the case. The footage has been examined repeatedly over the years. The identity of the person has never been publicly confirmed. The FBI still uses the surveillance image in its missing person alert, and that single piece of footage has become one of the defining images of Jennifer's disappearance. Who was the person? This is where the case becomes especially complicated. Over the years, investigators and members of the public have considered different possibilities. Could the person have been involved in Jennifer's disappearance? Could they simply have been someone who was asked to move the car? Could they have been a stranger who had nothing to do with Jennifer? There is no publicly confirmed answer. Investigators have also looked at people who were around Jennifer's condominium complex at the time. The area was undergoing construction and renovation. According to information published by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's case page, maintenance and construction workers in the area were considered possible suspects. Jennifer's family has also spoken over the years about concerns she had expressed regarding some workers in the area. But again, suspicion is not proof. No particular construction worker has been established publicly as Jennifer's killer or abductor. And that is one of the biggest challenges of telling this story responsibly. There are theories. There are people of interest. There are unanswered questions, but there has never been a public conviction for Jennifer's disappearance. Theories about what happened. Over the years, several theories have circulated. One possibility is that Jennifer was abducted shortly after leaving her condominium. This theory focuses heavily on the fact that her home appeared normal, while her personal belongings and vehicle were missing. Another possibility is that Jennifer was abducted somewhere between her home and work. That would potentially explain why there was so little physical evidence at her condominium. There have also been theories involving people who knew Jennifer, and some people have suggested that her disappearance could have been connected to someone watching her or someone who had access to the condominium complex. But none of these theories has been proven. There is another important detail. Jennifer's car was found about a mile from her home, and the person who parked it appeared to walk away. That raises an obvious question. Why would someone take Jennifer's car only to abandon it so close to where she lived? Was the vehicle being used to create distance between Jennifer and the person responsible? Was the person trying to avoid being seen near her condominium? Or was there another explanation entirely? We simply don't know. The biggest mystery for many viewers, the strangest part of the case isn't even the disappearance itself. It is the surveillance footage. Think about what investigators had. They had Jennifer's car. They had a person who appeared to be connected to that car. They had photographs of that person. They knew approximately where the car was left. And yet the most important identifying feature, the person's face, was obscured. The FBI's description remains remarkably simple. The surveillance image shows a person of interest walking away from Jennifer's car after parking it. That image has survived for years, and technology has changed dramatically since 2006. What investigators could barely analyze 2 decades ago can now potentially be examined using much more advanced imaging techniques. That is one reason Jennifer's family continues to hope. The case changes hands. The years passed. Jennifer's family refused to stop searching. But the investigation itself became increasingly complicated. The Kesse family eventually became highly critical of the Orlando Police Department's handling of the investigation and fought for access to case materials. In 2022, Jennifer's father publicly accused the department of negligence. The family has argued that investigative problems and delays may have cost Jennifer opportunities to be found. Those are serious allegations, and the department has maintained its commitment to finding answers. Eventually, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement became involved in the case. By 2025, Jennifer's family said investigators were actively working on the case. And then came an important update. The 2025 breakthrough. In October 2025, Jennifer's family said investigators with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement had told them the case was no longer considered cold from their perspective. Her father, Drew Kesse, said investigators had identified DNA evidence that had not previously been tested. He also said the list of people of interest had been reduced to a smaller group investigators were focusing on. This was significant, not because it solved the case. It didn't. But because after so many years, there appeared to be renewed investigative activity. The family described themselves as more hopeful than they had been in years. And then, in January 2026, another update brought even more attention to the case. 20 years later, January 24, 2026, marked exactly 20 years since Jennifer disappeared. 2 decades. 20 years without an answer. 20 years without Jennifer coming home. Her family has continued searching. And according to reporting from WKMG News 6, investigators are now retesting DNA associated with evidence from Jennifer's car. The family has also expressed hope that modern artificial intelligence and image analysis technology could help investigators examine the surveillance footage and possibly identify the person captured in it. That doesn't mean AI has identified the person. It hasn't. It means the family hopes modern technology may be able to extract more information from evidence that was difficult to interpret in 2006. That distinction matters. The case remains unsolved. Jennifer has not been found, and no one has been convicted for her disappearance. But investigators are still working with evidence that has existed for years. What we know. So after all these years, what can we actually say with confidence? We know Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old when she disappeared from Orlando in January 2006. We know she was expected at work and never arrived. We know her family quickly became concerned. We know her condominium did not show an obvious sign of a violent struggle. We know important personal items were missing. We know her Chevrolet Malibu was found about a mile away. We know surveillance footage captured a person parking that vehicle. And we know the person's identity has never been publicly established. The FBI continues to seek information about Jennifer's disappearance. FBI 1. Beyond those facts, there are many questions. And those questions are exactly why the case continues to capture public attention. The questions that remain. Who was the person in the surveillance footage? Did that person know Jennifer? How did Jennifer's car get from her condominium to the apartment complex? Was Jennifer inside the car when it was driven there? If she wasn't, where was she? Was she abducted near her home? Was she intercepted somewhere else? Did someone watch her routine? And perhaps the biggest question of all, where is Jennifer Kesse? 20 years later, there is still no definitive answer. Her parents have spent years fighting to keep her name in the public eye. They have searched. They have hired investigators. They have pushed for access to evidence. They have continued asking for information. And now with DNA being retested and investigators examining old evidence with modern technology, there is renewed hope that something hidden inside the case may finally reveal itself. Jennifer disappeared when she was just 24 years old. She had a career, A home, a relationship, friends, parents who loved her, and an entire future ahead of her. Then, in the space between one ordinary night and one ordinary morning, everything changed. Her home was left behind, her car was abandoned, and one mysterious person was captured on camera. A face hidden by a fence post, a person walking away, and a question that has remained unanswered for 20 years. Maybe the answer is somewhere inside that surveillance footage. Maybe it is in the DNA evidence investigators are now re-examining. Maybe someone who knows what happened has remained silent all these years. Or maybe there is evidence investigators haven't yet connected to the disappearance. What we do know is that Jennifer Kesse has never been forgotten. Her family is still searching. Investigators are still working. And somewhere, there may still be an answer to the question that has haunted this case since January 24th, 2006. What happened to Jennifer Kesse? If you have information about Jennifer's disappearance, authorities continue to ask the public to come forward. And for Jennifer's family, after 20 years, the hope remains the same. Bring Jennifer home. See you in the next one.